It is 4:42 p.m. on a Tuesday. You are sitting in a conference room or perhaps staring at a Zoom grid, and the meeting leader just said the words that trigger a very specific physiological spike in your bloodstream. They said, "Let's just take 10 more minutes to wrap this up." But you do not have 10 minutes. You have a hard stop at 5 p.m. because the daycare charges $1 a minute after 5:30. And traffic is currently a red line on your GPS. Your heart rate elevates, not because you are bad at your job, and not because you don't care about the project, but because you are living in a structural collision. Two tectonic plates are grinding against each other right now: the legacy expectations of a post-industrial work model and the immovable reality of modern caregiving. This moment, this panic, is usually misdiagnosed. You might call it stress. Society calls it the struggle of the working mom. But let's look at this like systems architects for a moment. The problem isn't that you are disorganized. The problem is that you are running two incompatible operating systems simultaneously. The workplace was designed in an era where there was a domestic support officer at home, usually a wife who handled the logistics of life. That role was the infrastructure that allowed the ideal worker to stay late, travel on a whim, and focus entirely on the job. Today, you are the ideal worker and the domestic support officer. You are attempting to run high-performance software on hardware that hasn't been upgraded since 1950. This isn't a personal failure. It is a failure of infrastructure. In engineering, we talk about a concept called the single point of failure. If one component crashes, the entire system goes dark. In your household, that component is you. You are the load-bearing wall. If you get the flu, the logistics of the house collapse. If you get stuck in traffic, the pickup chain breaks. If you have a late meeting, dinner doesn't happen. Living as a single point of failure is not sustainable. It keeps your nervous system in a state of hypervigilance because you know, subconsciously, that there is no safety net. You are the net, and you cannot negotiate for a raise or take a high-stakes project or even think clearly when your entire existence is one traffic jam away from chaos. Before we continue, if this resonates, if you feel the weight of that load-bearing wall, I invite you to join us at PathFindHer. We are building the blueprints to reinforce that structure. Let's look at a specific, real-world example of how this single point of failure manifests. It's 6 a.m. You have a board presentation at 9 a.m. This is the meeting that determines your budget for the next year. You wake up to the sound of a cough. Your 4-year-old feels like a radiator. In a robust system, this is a minor variable. In a fragile system, this is a catastrophic event. You immediately enter crisis negotiation mode. You look at your partner. You look at your calendar. You start doing the mental math of who has the less important day. Usually, you default to yourself, or you attempt the impossible work from home with the sick child maneuver, which means you are doing neither job well. The anxiety you feel in this moment is the direct result of having zero redundancy. You are operating at 100% capacity with no margin for error. So, how do we fix this? We stop treating childcare like a favor we ask for and start treating it like a utility we pay for. We build what I call a Failover Protocol. In server management, when the primary server goes down, a secondary server immediately kicks in. You need that for your life. This means diversifying your support grid. It means having a paid sitter on retainer who covers the gap hours between school end and work end. It means cultivating a relationship with a neighbor or a family member who is explicitly the emergency contact, not just by default, but by agreement. The script sounds like this. I am auditing our household infrastructure. Currently, if I am unavailable, the system breaks. We need to budget for a backup node. You move the conversation from "I need help" to "we need system reliability." Now that we have addressed the logistics, we must address the culture. There is a silent tax you pay every day called the visibility gap. This is the energy you spend hiding the scaffolding of your life. When you leave at 4 p.m. for pickup, you might leave your jacket on your chair to make it look like you're just in the restroom. You blur your background on Zoom so no one sees the pile of laundry. You list "appointment" on your calendar instead of "pediatrician." We do this because we are afraid of the flexibility stigma, the assumption that if we need flexibility, we are less committed to our careers. But this hiding is expensive. It costs you cognitive load. It drains the battery you should be using for strategic thinking. The compass setting here is simple but difficult. Secrecy creates shame. Visibility creates leverage. When you hide the labor required to maintain your life, you devalue it. You reinforce the myth that the ideal worker has no outside responsibilities. By engaging in this performance art of effortless availability, you are actually undermining your own value. You are telling your organization that your output is free of friction, which makes it easier for them to pile on more work. We need to shift the economic model. We need to move from hiding the cost to declaring the overhead. When you are transparent about your hard stops, you force the organization to respect the resource of your time. Consider the scenario of the recurring dentist appointment. I worked with a director of operations who left every Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. for her son's speech therapy. For 2 years, she told her team she had recurring medical appointments or client meetings. She was terrified that if she said speech therapy, she would be seen as a distracted mother. One day, her boss called her during the session. She didn't answer. She spent the next hour spiraling, crafting an apology email. The reality? Her boss didn't care where she was. He just needed an answer to a question. The friction wasn't the therapy. The friction was the lie. The energy she spent covering her tracks was energy she couldn't spend on the actual work. She was paying interest on a debt that didn't exist. The fix is to reclaim the narrative. You do not ask for permission, you inform of availability. This is a subtle but profound power shift. Instead of asking, "Is it okay if I leave early for my kid?" you say, "I am offline from 4 to 7 p.m. for family logistics. I will be back online for a final check at 8 p.m. Note the difference. The first is a request that can be denied. The second is a parameter of your operation. When you state your parameters clearly, people adjust. They might not like it initially, but they will respect the predictability. You are training your team on how to interface with you. Use the if-then logic. If you need me after 4 p.m., send a text and I will triage it. Otherwise, it waits until morning. You are the architect of your availability. Let's go deeper into the machine. Beyond the physical logistics of pickup and drop-off, there is the RAM, the random access memory of your brain. This is the mental load. It's the running list of who needs new shoes, when the permission slip is due, what we are having for dinner, and whether the dog has been wormed. In the traditional model, this data processing runs in the background of your mind constantly. It is bloatware. It slows down your processing speed for professional tasks. You find yourself in a high-level strategy meeting, but 15% of your brain is wondering if you remembered to sign the form. This split focus is not a lack of discipline. It is an allocation error. In computing, when a task is too heavy for one processor, we use distributed computing. We break the task down and assign pieces to different nodes. In your home, you are likely the central server processing all data. You need to decentralize. This brings us to the concept of ownership versus execution. Often, partners or helpers will execute a task if told, but you still own the management of it. You still have to remember to tell them to do it. That is not help. That is delegation, which still requires management oversight. True relief comes from handing over the ownership of the task completely. The goal is to remove the file from your desktop entirely. Here is the scene. It is Saturday morning. There is a classmate's birthday party at 11 a.m. You are the one who bought the gift, wrapped the gift, put the event on the calendar, remembered to buy the card, and got the child dressed. Your partner is standing there holding a coffee asking, "What time do we have to leave?" In this moment, your partner is a passenger. You are the pilot, the navigator, and the flight attendant. The resentment you feel is valid. You are carrying the cognitive weight of the entire operation. Even if your partner drives the car, you did the work. The real-world friction here is that you are exhausted before the weekend has even started because you are running the project management software for the entire family. To solve this, we use the CPE method: conception, planning, execution. You sit down with your partner and you divide domains, not tasks. You do not say, "Please buy a gift." You say, "I need you to own the social domain for this month." Owning the domain means they handle the conception, realizing there is a party, the planning, buying the gift and card, and the execution, getting the kid to the party. If they fail, if they show up without a gift, you must let them fail. This is the hardest part. You cannot swoop in and save them because if you do, you take back the ownership. You have to let the system fail so the other operator learns the code. This is how you clear your RAM. You hand over entire folders, not just individual files. We return to the most contested territory in the working mother's landscape, the 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. block. This is the arsenic hour at home, but in the corporate world, it is often seen as prime collaboration time. This is where the structural collision is most violent. You are trying to wrap up a report while a toddler is screaming, or you are racing against the clock to beat traffic. The friction here is the expectation of always-on availability colliding with the biological imperative of dinner and bedtime. Most women try to white-knuckle through this. They try to answer emails while cooking pasta. They try to listen to a conference call while giving a bath. This is not multitasking. This is ineffective fracturing of attention. We need to apply the laws of physics to your time. Two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. You cannot be a present parent and a present executive in the same 10-minute window. When you try to be both, you become a ghost in both worlds. The compass principle here is compartmentalization over integration. For years, we were told to integrate work and life. That is a trap. Integration just means work bleeds into everything. We need walls. We need firewalls. You need a hard psychological and digital partition between the work zone and the care zone. It is better to be offline for 3 hours and fully present than online and incompetent for 3 hours. Let's play out the simulation. It is 3:45 p.m. A calendar invite pops up from a senior stakeholder. Urgent, sync, Q3 strategy. It is scheduled for 5:30 p.m. Your pulse spikes. You have no coverage. In the past, you might have accepted, propped the iPad up for the kids, and prayed for silence. You would sit in the meeting, sweating, muted, terrified of a background noise. You are not listening to the strategy. You are listening for the kids. This is the definition of low-leverage work. You are physically present but cognitively absent. You are essentially defrauding the company of your best thinking because the infrastructure isn't there to support it. The path forward requires a script I call the strategic decline. You do not apologize. You do not explain. You propose a high-value alternative. It sounds like this. I have a hard stop at 5 p.m. today. However, this topic is critical. I can send my initial thoughts via email by 4:30 p.m., or we can move this to 8:30 a.m. tomorrow when I can give it my full focus. Notice what you did there. You validated the importance of the work. This topic is critical. You offered an asynchronous solution, email. You offered a synchronous alternative, tomorrow morning. You protected the boundary without looking like you were slacking. You framed your refusal as a way to ensure quality. I want to give this my full focus is the ultimate professional power move. Finally, we must debug the internal software, the guilt. The motherhood guilt is a malicious code that runs in the background, telling you that whatever you are doing, it is the wrong thing. If you are at work, you should be with your kids. If you are with your kids, you should be answering that email. This binary thinking, that you are always failing someone, drains your battery faster than any actual task. It creates a hesitation in your decision-making. You second-guess your childcare choices. You overcompensate by buying expensive toys or working late into the night. This guilt is not a moral compass. It is a glitch. It is a byproduct of the incompatible operating systems we discussed at the start. We need to replace the perfection setting with the good enough architecture. In software development, we ship a minimum viable product, MVP. It isn't perfect. It works. It solves the problem. We need to apply MVP thinking to domestic life. Your dinner does not need to be organic and made from scratch. It needs to be nutritional fuel. Your time with your children does not need to be Pinterest-worthy. It needs to be connected. The goal is not optimization of every variable. The goal is system stability. If the kids are loved, fed, and safe, and the work is delivered on time, the system is green. Stop trying to get an A+ in a class that is pass-fail. Here is the scene. The school bake sale. The email goes out asking for volunteers. The legacy model mom stays up until 1 a.m. baking bespoke cookies shaped like dinosaurs. She arrives at work the next day exhausted, resentful, and foggy. She snaps at a colleague. She makes a mistake on a spreadsheet. All for the cookies. The architect mom, you, stops at the grocery store, buys 2 dozen cupcakes for $12, transfers them to a Tupperware container, and goes to sleep at 10 p.m. You arrive at work fresh. The kids eat the sugar regardless of the source. The school gets the money. The outcome is identical, but the cost to your internal system is vastly different. One is a vanity metric. The other is strategic resource allocation. We have covered a lot of ground. We have looked at the single point of failure, the visibility gap, the mental load, and the boundary physics. Now, I want you to look at your life not as a series of obligations, but as a blueprint. Where are the load-bearing walls? Where are the cracks? Stop trying to patch the drywall and start reinforcing the foundation. You are the architect. You decide what the structure looks like. Start small. Pick one protocol we discussed today. Maybe it's the Failover Protocol for childcare. Maybe it's the strategic decline for late meetings. Maybe it's handing over the birthday domain to your partner. Execute one change this week. This map is living. It changes as your career grows and your children age, but the principles of redundancy, visibility, and boundaries remain constant. I want to know which coordinate on this map resonated most with you. Was it the 4 p.m. power play? Was it the concept of being the single point of failure? Reach out to the PathFindHer collective. Let's compare blueprints. Let's share the scripts that worked and the ones that didn't. You are not just maintaining a life, you are engineering a legacy. Stop apologizing for the infrastructure you need to build it. I'm Chris. This is PathFindHer. Keep building.